does that compare, Sandy, to a game of footy with your mates?
Look, there's unequivocal research about the impact of these sorts of games. There's over 130 evidence-based pieces of research that tell us that violent games like this increase aggressiveness, increase angry thoughts, increase aggressive behaviour. So we can either choose to dismiss this sort of research or take it on board as parents and say, this is what the scientific community is telling us, that this is really something that we need to be very mindful of, and we really need to guard our children's brains. We're not saying don't do it at all, but we're saying the research is very much telling us, and there's over 116 research reports telling us that it affects the structure and performance of the brain as well.
This is not bad. So Sam and Harry are playing it this morning. This is not bad for them, is it?
Look, it's not bad for them so long as it's monitored, would be my advice. No one's saying for 1 second, don't play it.
Okay, so 40 million people are playing this game now,
More
at least.
than.
So 100 million, maybe 100 million, 200 million, whatever it is, and they're going to keep playing it.
Yep.
So no matter what age they are, there are going to be kids in this country and every country around the world who aren't supervised. So what damage is it going to do?
So what they talk about and what it actually affects is the pleasure centres of the brain in the front lobe of the brain. So we really need to be mindful that this is actually impacting on our behaviour. It decreases empathy. What it's actually doing, as Charlie rightly said, its aim is to kill, hurt, maim. That's the goal.
But they're cartoon characters, they're caricatures, and we don't see blood, Sandy. So many parents are saying it's okay because we're not seeing the blood and guts.
That's a complete cop-out, and I would completely rebut that argument.
No, but kids aren't going to go out there and kill people just because they're playing this game.
No, it's a whole package. What we do know, though, is children who are exposed to it for a long period of time, unsupervised, as a cheap babysitting exercise.
It's pretty controversial, guys. Welcome back to the games. How's everybody doing out there? I'm going to be talking with my friend Mr.SmallandLoud on this topic very, very shortly. It's pretty interesting to me as a father and also a gamer to talk about this because, I can see effects on my son from video games as well as, how it affects me too. But this is going, I think, a little bit too far. Let's get into the Discord here. And hold on 1 second. Let me just talk with Mr.SmallandLoud. Let's get him in here. Let's see here. Where is he at? You guys are already upset about this. Here, let's get in here. And there we go. And we'll bring him down in here. My friend. Are you there?
How's it going?
Hey, how's it going, bro? Here, let me get your sound levels right for the stream here. I just played the clip you showed me last week. And it was so very outrageous to my senses. What is it about? What do you think about this that you showed me?
Let me clarify to everyone watching right now. Every single thing that came out of their mouths is full of shit and has nothing to do with science. Because the actual research on this issue is fairly clear. Like the 1990s, video games started to become more popular. You had sales just spiking. So if these things did indeed cause violence, you would see an associated spike in violent crime. But guess what you don't find?
It's that.
It's actually an inverse relationship, which essentially means the more video game sales you have, and the more people tend to play video games, the violent crime rate either
decreases,
flatlines and slightly goes down, or goes down completely.
They're inside playing a game. You know what I mean? They're inside. They're away from the opportunity to actually do something bad, right? They're occupied. Is that what basically the argument is? Is the counter argument is like, hey, we're playing video games. We're inside. We're actively involved in the game, and we're not actually a potential threat out there doing something. Is that kind of how the counter argument to that goes? Is what you're stating?
It's essentially the same argument for after school programs, because they're busy doing other things and they're not going outside and getting in trouble.
Right. Now, I was reading a little bit about this, and okay, so there's another counter argument to that, which is really interesting, which is saying that the long-term effect of children who are playing video games that are violent. Now, this is the thing that I find really interesting, because they used Fortnite here, and I'm showing the clip on the stream, and it's obvious why they use Fortnite. It's obvious to me why they have 2 children sitting down on beanbags playing video games, which is fucking ridiculous. I mean, this is classic media fucking hypnotization tactics here, when they're look at the kids playing the fucking video games right in front of it. Like, that's demeaning to me. Like, as a parent, like, to bring children out to play video games while you're saying it's a fucking bad thing to do, like, is kind of demeaning to the child sitting there. Number one, here's the thing, right? As a parent, with Devin, I introduced games to him, and I'm okay. I was okay when he was small to play certain types of games. It's parenting, isn't it? Isn't it, Mr. Small and Loud? Isn't it about parenting, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, when it comes down to it,
responsibility.
Yeah, like, when it comes down to it, any time, which time over time, they continue to point the finger. They always point the finger at video games, like that's the fucking issue, and that I don't think that is the issue. The issue is, and I don't know if this has any correlation. This is speculative, what I'm about to say, but this is my belief. This is my opinion. I believe that the divorce rate in America, and I'm not quite sure worldwide what it is, but in America, it's over 60%. I'm pretty sure I'm correct. Approximately over 60%. Yeah. Okay, so, like, I would say, wouldn't we have to start there? Wouldn't we have to actually start, like, at the parenting level before we actually, like, point fingers at video games and say video games are the problem to the equation, and if they're violent especially, they're the problem? And, like, isn't this kind of like a New World Order shit that I'm seeing here? Is this kind of like a New World Order shit? They're producing it on the Today Show, and they're giving it to all the people that are watching the Today Show like sheep, and now you've got, like, a whole bunch of parents out there that are like, oh, that's the game, including divorced parents that are shit parents. Not all of them, by the way. I'm not saying that all divorced parents are shit parents, but I'm saying there's a lot of shit parents out there, and a lot of shit parents are now going to look at this and be like, oh, it's video games. That's why they don't look at themselves. What do you think about that?
It's extremely morally abhorrent, because one, it's based upon actually no evidence. So it's brainwashing as stereotypical as can be. Like, the Supreme Court ruled in 2011, when a case came up related to video game violence, that there was no scientific connection between crime and video game violence.
Right, so right. Go ahead, keep going.
What these media companies are doing is essentially trying to divert your attention away from, like, the real solutions. So in an indirect way, by wasting people's times and wasting parents' times, you could easily argue that this is actually getting people killed, and not addressing things that they're reacting to, like school shootings.
School shootings brings about this conversation big time. Like, anytime there's school shootings, they go right back to video games again, because they find out the kid plays Doom, or like they find out that he's playing video games or not. And they're like, oh, it's a shooting game, that's why he's a school shooter, which I think is bullshit, because, like, a lot of these kids are tied to very bad situations at the house. Like, really bad. And in fact, the data that I was looking at said that who's the guy who puts the warnings on the cigarette cartons? Surgeon General. This is where it's tied back to. In 1972, the Surgeon General basically declared that video games in themselves were violent. Now, that's a little strange to me, because, like, and movies and video games were both declared that this particular behavior is going to increase aggressive behavior in children. Now, that's where this came from. Like, the initial concept was back in the 70s. I'm not quite sure if it's 72, but and, like, from that point on, it's kind of glided on. Now, I've got an article right here for the stream right now. I like that Minxie's getting so upset in the chat. This is great. Hey, Minxie, how are you doing today? She's absolutely living.
Cutie and Blaine are as well. I'm getting even more upset.
I'm so happy to have you here today, Mr. SmallandLoud. This is great, dude. I'm gonna also promote his channel at the very end of the stream. I wish we had much more viewers. This definitely deserves a lot more viewers than this. But, like, okay, so here we got Trump. Now, this is Trump. Like, this is interesting. So I did a little bit of research. You sent me this clip, and over the past week or so, I've been like kind of digesting material. Now, Trump in last February, says that video games do in fact lead to violence. Like the president of the United States, which I can't really believe this is, but hey, he is also saying
#fake news.
Yes, he is also saying, and this is funny because they're reporting it on a CNN site. Now, interestingly enough, you get into the politics of CNN being like more liberal and to the left. So they have a counter argument in this particular article, and they're talking about a gentleman here named, they go over the statistics that we just reviewed, and they say, okay, yes, in fact, that they do increase aggressive behavior. And then you go down here, and then CNN's like, well, fuck this. Obviously, we don't like Trump, so we're going to like counter this. And they say that there is a guy, let's see what, what's his name? Okay, Whitney DeCamp, who's an associate professor and sociologist at Western Michigan University, did a study of like 65. Anyway, the article states, like in summary, they did like this sociological experiment in children in the 8th grade, 6,500 of them, and saw no link at all in aggressive behavior with video games, right? And so like you're going to get into this argument.
Trump, it's all evidence that is complete, decisive evidence.
So I'm wondering,
that it does
right?
Cause it.
It's really strange. Like I'm starting to think that this is more political than anything else. Because then I'm like, okay, well that's interesting. So then I go over to this particular article in Psychology Today. Now I'm not quite sure about the legitimacy of Psychology Today. It could be like the rag of psychology. Like the psychologist could be like, oh, not this shit.
It's
like
fairly respected.
Okay,
I would say it's fairly respected. I will say from my experience.
Okay, good. I'm glad you know a little bit more about this topic than I do. Now this guy actually is saying it is. Now, like with the disclaimer that this Brad J. Bushman has "get psyched" as a joke under his name, like, woo, what a zinger that is. But like he's saying, now this is interesting. This is what I was reading. In 1972, Surgeon General issued the following warning on violent TV programs. Sorry, it was TV programs. It is clear to me that the causal relationship between televised violence and antisocial behavior is sufficient to warrant appropriate and immediate remedial action. So he's saying, like, now this is interesting. This is an article in 70. Or this is a statement in 1972 by the Surgeon General against TV. Sorry, I gotta revise my statement. Video games weren't even a huge thing in the 70s, right? Like, but they had Pong. You know what I mean? Like how aggressive can you get from
Pong?
Okay. So interestingly, they're going after TV here and violent TV, and you get like fast forward a couple decades later, and now it's going to the games. But I still think that we're getting back into parenting. We're getting back into parenting again, because it should all be limited to a degree. Like if your child's playing 24/7, is it a problem because the games are violent, or is it a problem because you let your child play 24/7? Like I would imagine, like here's
an addiction.
Yeah, like that would be addiction. Now, see, that's when I say yes, that is a problem, right? Like as a parent. So here's my flip side of the coin. While I don't believe any of this fucking hogwash, the flip side of the coin for me on the argument opposing video games is this: if the child was to play for say a particular amount of hours that concern me, then that's addictive, and that lands on me. That lands on me as a father. To be like, hey, get off the goddamn video games and go throw some basketball, or let's play some basketball, or let me be a parent. Let me be a parent and actually take you out and do some shit, Like I get involved with Dev. Now here's the other thing I think is, like, I get involved with Dev and playing video games on the stream often. And I think that's a lot of fun. And I think that's kind of like a parenting thing, because you're supervising while you're playing. Now, granted, Blaine will come on and throw out some like fuck yous and some shits. And I'll be like, Blaine, watch your mouth. You're playing with my son. But at the same time, it's like, I have to, as a parent, kind of be super aware of what he's getting into. There's been a lot of times where I ground him from the games, and I see that little addiction. I see that little Gollum that's like precious, like he's like, he can't take it away. And then like I will take the Xbox away for a week, and then after a day or two of complete misery because I took that away from him. I start to see the Devin that I know. Like I'm like, oh, here you are. Like here you are again. Go ahead.
I will say that as a parent, if you let your kid play a reasonable amount of video games, there is evidence to suggest that's helping them in the long run. Because, like,
problem solving.
I'll give you an example from 2000. There was a 2013 study that showed if you played a reasonable and not an unhealthy amount of video games, it stimulates the growth of brain neurons and increases the connectivity between those neurons. So you actually are helping your child by allowing them to play a reasonable amount of these things.
Problem solving,
it's
right?
the flip of what the media is saying. It's actually healthy for you if you're doing it in a reasonable amount.
We got a lot of people in the chat right now that are getting completely triggered by everything that we're talking about, which is the reason why we're talking about it. We are happy to be bringing this to you today. I have my friend here, Mr.SmallandLoud, and we're talking about gaming and the direct correlation with gaming and violent behavior. Now, my son, I don't know if you know Mr.SmallandLoud. I have like a kind of side channel that I do like news, and it's right up your alley. I haven't been able to produce a lot of content on it. And he was involved. He was involved in a school shooting. No shit, man. Like I actually like talk about it on that channel. And man, that was scary as a father to go through. And in this town, in this area in Ohio, it's not that small actually. But it's nothing I would say is huge. There was a big backlash against video games. Like they did exactly what you're seeing here, and they literally blamed this child's behavior on gaming. They really did. They completely threw gaming under the bus as the issue. Now, I did a little research and I found out that he was living with his grandparents and that his parents weren't the best parents, and that there was a lot of like issues at the house, right? And that he felt neglected. And this child they released, which I thought was a little too personal, but they did it. The police released his journal, right? And so this kid wrote this journal. So, while I didn't agree with it, it piqued my interest. I'm like, well, let me read some of this shit. And what I read was like just like a malevolence. It wasn't even like it was like a level above evil, right? And I thought to myself, like, how did that get there? And then I was weighing my options. I'm like, did this level of evil that I'm reading, because it was horrible, man. I mean, he was going off about, I find a lot of times like there's like human beings can deal with tragedy, right? Like we can deal with tragedy. We can deal with hurricanes. We can deal with like, what nature throws at us. In fact, we thrive a lot. Like we find out who we are as a human when we go up against these tragedies, personal struggles, health issues, like anything that you find, like we tend to strive towards becoming or getting over it, and it makes us stronger as human beings. But malevolence, which is like this level of evil that is like that exists above evil, is like like a purposeful, like I find people that are malevolent are actually hurting not only other people around them but themselves, because they're angry at creation itself. Like they're angry that they're even alive. You know what I mean? They're angry at like the idea of God and creation, and they're like, fuck everything, I'm gonna get rid of everything. But when I see it, right, because you can see it in certain people, like there's even movies that like display like people that are just like fucking, whoo, and you're like, wow, I feel that evil in that person. that evil is so strong. But it's always tied to like, it is always tied to like a misunderstanding, like there's always tied to like something that happened to that particular individual, like where they weren't listened to, or they weren't, they didn't have somebody there for them, or they didn't have like the guidance that they needed. And I tie it back to parenting again. Like I tie it back to like the people that created the person that brought them into the world. These people need to be super aware of this new being that's in the world. They need to do something. Yeah, I mean, like it's not, you can't just like say the kid did not know about video games until somehow you introduced them to video games. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and if they did find out through like other kids at school, which could happen, and then they told you about it, then you are the person that introduced them to the video games. You know what I mean? So like you have to monitor your child. And with the notes that I read from this kid that brought a rifle. Now, how the fuck a rifle got into my son's school, like, I don't know. Like, did he put it in a tuba case or like, I don't know. It was a huge ass rifle. I can't remember the make of it now, but it was like a 3.5. It was a longer rifle than normal. And the kid probably got to the point where he's so angry and he went in there. And you know what the sad thing is? He did, and I'm actually very happy he didn't go off on my child or anybody else's child. But like, he ended up killing himself. And I think what happened in his case is like he reached that level of like, nobody gives a fuck. I'm going to kill everybody. You read the notes. They were horrible. And he got into the bathroom. And I think what the realization like hit like a fucking hammer, where he's like, holy shit, I have a gun. I intend to kill people, and now it's the time to do it. And he probably hit this level where he just realized, like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, how did I even get here? And then boom, offed himself. And that's what I'm saying. Like, he hit a level in which he realized, like, he didn't have parents, man. Like, and maybe, you know, I could be, again, this is kind of speculative. He could have had really nice grandparents, but like he might have been way too gone. You know, he might have been way too gone by the time he got to his grandparents to even give a shit anymore, you know? So yeah, now that I'm setting you up. Okay, go ahead.
I'm just gonna like, I think we often, like when we reach our adult years, we often forget that when you're young, like your brain is still developing. So you're not thinking in the exact same way you're thinking like right now as you are. You're not going to be thinking logically. So then add on top of that severe trauma, and then add on top of that like social isolation, like that's going to cause very negative effects. And every single time we look at any of these school shooters, the media will look at what he played and then pick out one of the games that are violent and ignore like the 20 games that are like Super Mario Bros. That clearly are not violent at all. And they just form a narrative and try to scapegoat this because
it's an easy answer
to the donors.
It's an easy answer. And another thing that I noticed about the thing is you notice that they targeted Fortnite. You notice that the Today Show put Fortnite on there or had a doctor with the opinion that video games are violent. This is a media thing. Okay, this is what I got to get people to understand. It's a business. They want the clicks. They want the views. You know, like the reason why we're all seeing this, the reason why we're getting all triggered about this isn't really the topic at all. It's the thought behind the person that said, who's in charge here at the Today Show, that said, okay, how do we get more eyes on our channel, on our shit, right? And I know what I'm going to do. Fortnite is a large game. It's the biggest game ever. We're going to combine Fortnite and we're going to combine video games giving aggressive behavior to children. We're going to bring that old topic back, but now we're going to combine it with Fortnite, which is the most popular game ever. You know, there's going to be people, both children and adults, watching this. They hit their demographics correctly, right? And they're like, hey, this is how we're going to get people to watch our channel. Not only that, but we're going to put the cherry on top of the sundae, and we're going to put the kids in the beanbags right in front of the fucking people who are discussing the very nature of what it is that this is about. Go ahead.
Also consider like who's funding the actual show. Now, if hypothetically, I'm not going to get into all politics, but hypothetically, let's say a right winger is funding a show.
Right.
Now, they don't want gun control. If some people see that as a solution. So if they can scapegoat video games, that's like 5, 10, 15 years of political stagnation, and their donors will continue to fund them, and they will be able to fund their network.
They will get the money. It's back to the money game again. You're absolutely right. The money in the politics is so infiltrating. Like the politics in itself in general is just so fucking infiltrated into the shit that we watch, you know, because that's what we do, you know, like people realize the politicians and those that are leading realize that, you know, and that's the thing about politics anymore. It's hard for me to even follow because it's so fucking gimmicky. It's such a game anymore. Like I don't see any real people anymore in the political realm, you know, and it's so split now. It's so binary. It's so red and blue right now. It's so like left and right. And I like to see like this individualism kind of happening that gives me hope, where people are just saying, hey, I'm going to start actually knowing about the individual, right? I mean, like, that's what I like. Like, I'm so happy I'm starting to see a little bit more people become more self-aware in the fact that they're not looking at color anymore. Thank God. This is fucking, 1940 or 50, like last night that triggered me when that guy said the N-word. Like, I was playing PUBG last night and I told him I was a streamer. So he obligatorily just said like the N-word, and that kind of really like pissed me off. Like, I was just like, I can't believe that shit still exists. You got racism is fucking ridiculous. And so many things where like when I see ignorance, especially like this is ignorant beyond just about everything here. Like to me, when I look at this and I say like, it is so base just to blame video games as the fucking issue. Like that, like how doesn't it involve some type of like intellectual capacity to realize this is like, I mean, it doesn't involve a lot, actually. It shouldn't involve a lot. I mean, this is my viewpoint. It shouldn't involve a lot of intellectual capacity to look at something like this and say, this is complete bullshit. And I hope that like the major percentage of people that are watching are saying this is complete bullshit. Like anybody that out there that's watching right now that believes this, like that believes that video games is the root to all evil children, like, like all the evils of the world,
stupid, you're wrong.
like I'm just telling you right now, go fuck yourself and stop watching me right now. Like, I can't stand that viewpoint. Now, this
Believe
is
it or
interesting.
not, most of these strategies politically recycled and used again and again. So, for example, like with the big tobacco, they never tried to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that smoking was not bad for you. And you have like memos from the companies that are publicly available now that you can look at where.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. My son is like, Dad, I will be right back. This is the parenting part I was talking about.
Son takes priority.
Son does take priority. Son does take priority. Son is home on summer vacation. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you're bringing your friends. I'm so happy to have Mr. Small and Loud here. Let me give him a little plug here for the channel because I really love him. Go right now while I'm away, guys, and go subscribe to Mr. Small and Loud. Super nice guy. I've known him for a very long time. Personal friend of mine. I love him. Go check him out. There's his channel link. Go subscribe while I'm away. When I come back, something even crazier, Mr. Small and Loud. Look at this. What you see on the stream. That the World Health Organization, this just happened, by the way. This just happened. I don't know if you're aware of this. It's getting a little bit crazier now, okay? So we had the introduction of what we saw was video game causing, violence in children, which we just kind of rebutted against that for the past, I don't know how long we've been talking about this.
Disproved.
Like basically like 40 minutes worth of us just ranting against this. Now they're taking it a step further. And when I say they, I'm like, there's some type of force behind this kind of like, let's fuck with video games, right? The World Health Organization is calling gaming a disorder, a mental health condition. Now, when I come back, we're going to talk about this because I got some interesting things to say about this topic. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. And we're back. I'm here with my friend, Mr.SmallandLoud. I'm having a nice day, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today. If you missed any part of this so far, go back and watch the replay. I highly recommend this one to all your friends. We're talking about something near and dear to all of our hearts here on the Games Network. We're talking about gaming and direct correlations of gaming to children and violent behavior, which is something we've been talking about for nearly an hour now. Let me hop back to my friend here, Mr.SmallandLoud, who's completely awesome. Absolutely love him. Cool dude, very opinionated, and one of my very good friends here on the channel, in the network. By the way, if you're not in our Discord, go join it. A lot of cool times can be had right there. I'm getting back in here. Okay. All right, we're back. All right, we're back, Matt. Matt's in our chat as well right now. Please, Matt.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute myself again.
But I'd actually like to bring Matt in later in the discussion, because he's generally a very intelligent, bright dude, and he always adds a little bit to any conversation we have. So interestingly enough, let me get back into this. World Health Organization calling gaming a disorder. They're actually labeling this as a mental health condition. Did you hear about this, Mr.SmallandLoud?
Some things I haven't heard beyond. I haven't looked into it myself, but I have heard things. Now, the question is, are they talking about chronic gaming where you're playing like 24 or 20, like 24/7?
So that's the conclusion, right? So their conclusion is that long-term exposure to video games is basically like a mental health condition, which is interesting, because now this is the angle I'm taking on this particular article that I thought was like, wow, like that they're taking it to this next step, is that they're classifying it in a manner in which that it is possible to collect benefits through health insurance, right? So now, right. Like now you've got like this is a giant mess of spaghetti right now, dude. Like this right here. There are
I'm Italian. I'm okay with the spaghetti.
So am I. I guess that's why I'm using spaghetti references. But the interesting thing is that they're using this particular example as kind of like the next level of what we were just talking about. They're saying, hey, that a pattern of behavior. So this is how they're defining it. This is how World Health Organization is defining it. I don't necessarily disagree, because I think what they're going after here is they're saying, hey, like if the child is completely like being parented by video games and has no external stimulation, that it is in fact a mental health disorder. And I might not disagree with it. Here is the classifications. They say that the pattern of behavior has to at least be 12 months, okay? It must show an increased priority given to gaming. So, like, for instance, like I was saying with Devin, he has his, like, Schmeagol Gollum moments when he's like, precious, like, if you're seeing that all the time, if you see your child and he's grasping the Xbox and, like, making sweet, sweet love to it, then he's probably...
That's a warning sign. That might be...
So that was the next, that was the next fucking point. And the last point is, it's a continuation or escalation of gaming despite occurrence of negative consequences or behavior that affects one's relationship. This could mean that a teenager may play video games instead of doing homework and end up failing a test. Right. So like the child, and I have to admit, my Devin has done that sometimes, and I've been very upset about it, is where like Devin will actually end up being like, okay, I have a decision to make. Should I do my homework or should I play the video games? And I'll go to the video games, and I'm not aware of it. Right, and I'm not aware of it. So like the teacher goes, hey, you dumb fuck, like your kid actually didn't turn in his homework. And then that's when I come in and go, hey, sometimes it's very difficult to be a single dad. So like there are times I do slip, but most of the times you do have to be proactive. And for instance, while I was streaming, Devin's like, hey, dude, I'm hungry. I'm like, all right, I'm your dad. I provide for you, and I will help you out.
My offspring,
right.
Keep them alive.
right.
Nutrients.
Give them the strength that they need. But yeah, it's important to kind of like make sure that the child gets out of the house, like take them for walks, do some like physical activities. These are things that it's interesting because the article continues on and it says some other things in here that make me a little bit nervous. I thought the health insurance coverage was really interesting because that's going to fucking piss a lot of people off. That like, you know, like I might just apply for this and just be like, hey, my son's got a fucking mental health condition. I need some help here, and then, you know, get some government dollars. No, I would never do that.
The U.S. never follows the World Health Organization, anyways. We like to be independent. Regardless of what they say.
Right. Ah, fuck it. You know. Oh, Ebola. Fuck you. No. But yeah, that's interesting. Like, I thought that was a really interesting kind of. It almost seemed to me it was like back to back. Like, you showed me the article on the Today Show, you know, where they're linking aggressive behavior to video games. And then it wasn't but a couple days later, man, where this shit came out. And I was driving along in the car with Christy, and Christy's like, hey, weren't you and Mr. SmallandLoud going to talk about video games and the relevance and the connection between that and aggressive behavior? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, did you just see what the World Health Organization did? And it was like one of those like moments where I was like, what? Like, what do you mean?
Intertwined with your life.
Right. Like, wait, what's going on? And it wasn't, but it was like 2 days later where I saw that release, that information being released from the World Health Organization in the statement they made, which is causing a huge rift in the sociological world and the psychological world. There's psychologists for or against, and the political world because of the health insurance benefits and the additional amount of money needed. Because they just quoted a figure here that 90% of the people that they're talking about right now of teenagers and younger children play video games. 90 in America. 90%, dude. Like, and I think that also has direct correlation again with the 60% of people that are, you know, there's 60% of divorced parents out there. I know as a single father, sometimes I thank God my son has an Xbox, because I'm like, shit. Like, it gets me, you know, between Zoe and Devin, I'm like,
I was raised by a single father. So like playing those video games with him was actually one of like the best times I had.
The most memorable
it gave me an
moments.
opportunity to just bond with him.
I absolutely agree, man. My dad back in the 80s, okay, and when they had the Apple IIe with the green on green, man, he was playing wizardry, and I was in the basement, and I was helping him sketch out a map on the fucking, 1x1 square thing, you know, doing little maps with them and shit. And those were some of the best moments I ever had with my dad, was playing video games with him. So I don't know. I see this and I kind of think to myself, somebody's got an agenda, you know, like, especially like when people like do this, and I see this woman on here and she like,
so what's the aim?
It gives me a hatred. It gives me a hatred for the woman herself. Like, I don't want to feel that way. Like, I don't want to have like a hatred, but like, it's kind of like this evil setup when I watch this. It's so evil. It's so maniacal. It's very, pre-planned and formed. Like, you can watch this and I can definitely see that there is an agenda. Like, there's an agenda.
Remember this again. The memos from like Big Tobacco showed that their motto was, we don't need to prove that cigarettes are safe. We just need to produce enough conflicting information to confuse the general public.
Right. And that's what
they do on a whole host of issues.
On a daily basis.
Gaming.
Yeah. Like, well, let's just throw that in the mix because there's so many people that are gaming. Let's just do that and let's enrage. Like, let's just. I mean, they're trying to change. To a certain
extent, this really. Sorry, continue.
Go ahead.
To a certain extent, it really hits me hard because, you know, like me personally, I've had like 12 surgeries since I was a kid, and most of my youth, I couldn't really function and move. And video games were there as a way to connect me to people who I still have friendships with now. And it gave me not only a social life where I didn't have it, it was one of the best coping mechanisms I ever had.
Right.
There are people who genuinely need that, depending on their situation. And I don't know where I would be right now if I didn't play them.
It's an outlet, man. Like, a lot of times, like, it's just an outlet. You can like keep yourself busy with like the gaming and like sometimes it can be a healthy thing. And in fact, the studies you were quoting at the very beginning of our talk was something that like I kind of like agree. Like, I agree with it, is the fact that like sometimes gaming can be like the very antithesis of this whole argument. It's like it keeps people occupied. It's keeping people it's giving people something to do or to let their rage out on. Like, if I have violent tendencies, like, and trust me, I get rage mode all the time. Like I go beast mode like all the time. If something I get triggered on the daily, Mr. Small Love, by like everything around me. Like if I didn't have PUBG or some type of game,
channel
like,
your rage.
God only knows this world would be very, very a threat from me. Like if there wasn't video games like where I could take my triggeredness into the game and just be like, woo. And after the game, it's like this cathartic fucking moment. And I'm like, okay, now I feel better. Like if I didn't have that would be, everybody would hate me. Like everybody would hate me around me. I'd be the most vile son of a bitch in the world.
Stronger.
Fucking Sith Lord on this shit. So, hey, David, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, Minx, I believe that Mr. SmallandLoud is from New York. What is that true, Mr. SmallandLoud, that you're from New York? She's asking a question.
Boston area, actually.
Oh, Boston. Okay, Boston.
Near the Boston area, yeah.
Yeah, Jinx just had to know. Like, Jinx just had to know.
Accent, I get it. I get that a lot.
So here's his channel, guys. He's got some great topics on there. Go check him out. Great guy. Does the...
point out one quick thing?
Yes, go ahead.
The safest countries, like the countries that have the lowest violent crime rates...
Mm-hmm. Oh, you cut out. Go ahead. Try again.
Whatever narrative they're trying to push is completely 100% wrong. Play the most video games are the safest countries.
Those that play the most video games are the safest countries. Interesting data right there, man. That's actually very interesting. Oh, thank you, Shadow Gamer, for following. Thank you so much for joining the fam, Shadow. Appreciate the follow, man. Matt says, I think violent stories on the news normalize violence more than video games. So he's saying that, you know, like the more that the media focuses on the negative, the more negative that there will be, which is interesting because it tends to be like the negative in media is what, you know, people focus on because people get the views, they get the money from that, right? Like if it's a positive thing and it's like, oh, today Shelly helped out 100 kids in Somalia, you know, that headline doesn't get as much as like, you know, like terrorist opens fire and you know, I mean, like you know, like that type of shit tends to get more views. So Matt says, I don't advocate for the news to not report the violent realities for the sake of the children or some nonsense. We have ratings on games for parents to make decisions. Exactly. Which when they did that was even fucked up. I remember when they brought the ratings to video games and I thought to myself, if you're a parent and you can't figure out that like the title and the pictures on the fucking box are bad for your kid, then you shouldn't be a parent. Like I remember when those when they came out with those fucking, because not a lot of the people watching remember that shit. And I remember, when was that? Was that in the 90s, Matt? I think that was like late 90s, early 2000, where like they started to put the game ratings on there, like fucking movies. And I thought to myself, like, why is this even necessary? Like, shouldn't I be able to understand what I should and shouldn't get for my children? Shadow Gamer agrees with us. That's cool. We got Shadow agreeing with us. Thank you, Shadow. Mixie says, honestly, I think video games make children smarter. Some games I would agree with you, Mixie, like Portal, puzzle type of games, like any type of puzzle game, I think is something that would make my child a little bit smarter, solving problems. Mixie says, I can't English. Oh my God.
We've all been there.
We've been there. Matt says, yes, but games can and would deceive with their advertising. That's true. I will give you that, Matt. Like in regards to going back to that conversation we were talking about with classifying and games with ratings. I understand. You're right. There are times where like the industry will kind of, but I think that should, shit. Now we're getting into like regulation and shit.
Nowadays, like you should be able to just Google the name and it'll pop up just like that. Like
exactly.
Like even if they deceive you, unless you're completely illiterate, I don't see how you can't find this information.
Yeah, I agree. Like back in the day though, when it was first brought out, it wasn't so easily accessible, you know, like, and that is, I think, the caveat to what I was speaking about. Yeah, but interesting. I agree with Mr. SmallandLoud on that, Matt, is that, you know, like in today's day and age, you get a fucking review the day of, or sometimes even before if it's in like pre-alpha or shit, and you can find anything you want on the internet anymore. but we won't get into the fucking net neutrality shit because that might not be something that we can do anymore. Like, I won't even get into this shit. Don't even get me into this shit.
That's an important issue.
That's a whole nother issue, man. Like, there's so much going on in today's world. It's just driving me crazy. Mr. Small and Loud is reporting it all. Go check out his channel. Go subscribe. Anybody else have any other questions? Because if not, we're going to wrap this up. I'm telling you, I thought this was a very good talk. Do you have anything else you would like to add, Mr. Small and Loud, to the conversation?
Be appreciative to be finally let into the games. Is a lifetime goal. I feel special.
I'm so happy you're here, man. Like, I really think Mr. Small and Loud deserves a lot of your guys' love. He's in our network. He's a YouTuber and he's a good friend of mine. Known him for a very long time, back in the day when I was doing the vlogs with the kitties and they were smaller. And it's just so great. I was so happy to see you back, dude. And I'm so happy you're here, man. Just so happy. It just
so
made me
back.
smile. Awesome, dude. Awesome, dude. So go check him out. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. I might be streaming it in a few hours. I'm playing a game called Astroneer. I just bought it. It looks like an interesting game to me, kind of exploration space type of shit. So join us for that, and you can watch me get more aggressive as I play it.
It's gonna brainwash you, my friends. That's it. One game owl playing a game, and you're just gonna just go batshit.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Astroneer is multiplayer, so if you guys would like to play with me later, go ahead and we can do that because I am totally new to the game. So Jinx, we could play that together if you would like. Matt, if you got it. Anybody? I think up to 4 people, but I will reserve those spots for Jinx and Matt and one other player. So when we do that, awesome. Jinx and I can play a game together. We finally found a game we could play together, Jinx, which looks really fun to me. It looks really fun to me. Thank you again. Thank you so much again, Mr. Small and Loud, for being here. I super appreciate you, man. It's great to have you in our network, bro.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun, actually.
I do. I always have fun, man. Like I always like try to have fun, and I knew it'd be fun time with you, bro. I knew it'd be a fun time with you. So everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure to join our Twitch community. Hit Mr. Small and Loud subscribe button. You know, give him some love over there. And you know, this is fun. It's all about continuing to grow and having a good time. I'll see you later, Mr. Small and Loud. Thank you for joining me here today, bro.
Fun with the games.
All right. See you, man.